Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts, and today I pulled out this Simple Stories Birthday Blast collection, as well as this sketch from Scrapbook Generation. It's a one-page sketch, and I'm going to be doing a one-page layout. I was recently contacted by Tiffany over at CreatTiffCuts, and I was asked to use one of her cut files to create a layout. She is a smaller shop, and I definitely want to support the smaller shops. So I will link her Etsy shop below if you would like to check her out as well. These are the photos that I used when I did my video on how I store my sketches as well as my photos, and then also how I print them out. So it has been a while since I have planned out these photos. I planned out these photos with the intention of using the 6x8 paper pad because it had one of those bigger pieces on it, and I thought I could use that for the title. But when Tiffany reached out to me, I figured that this would also be a layout that I could switch out and use a cut file for. I did change up the sketch just a little bit and decided to use 2x3 photos instead of 2x2 photos. I did still use the 6x8 paper pad because that's really all that I have for this collection. I believe I got it from a peachy cheap deal and then was able to pick up a few other pieces at scrapbook.com. The 6x8 pad came with the peachy cheap deal, and then I was able to pick up a couple of the 12x12 sheets of paper. But this sketch is a perfect sketch to use with those 6x8 paper pads that Simple Stories tends to have. I used a full 6x8 sheet of paper in the blue with all the polka dots on it, and then I just cut out a couple of strips in the balloons, as well as the tone-on-tone blue and then the stripe paper. I did decide to back my photos on this green cardstock, so I am just adhering all of the photos down, and of course I didn't cut the photos to the same measurement, so I did have to pull out my T-square ruler and my X-Acto knife to trim off some of the photos so that it does make a perfect grid around these 4 photos. I'm going to get a total of 6 photos on this layout, which I feel like is a lot of photos for a one-page layout. These are the only photos that I have of him opening presents for his first birthday, and I feel like having the smaller 2x2 and 2x3 photos really help showcase what was going on during that time. Once I got the photos backed on the green cardstock, I did decide to cut that balloon paper down just a little bit. I probably could have left it on there. It was such a small piece that I cut off. The photo got bent a little bit in my envelope, which I've never had that happen before, so I just used a little bit of a liquid adhesive on the edge to make sure that it laid down flat. And then decided to add it to the top photo as well. And then I'm going to start to adhere everything down. I did decide to use the photo block as a placement to decide where I wanted to add all of the paper down. I really just wanted it to kind of be in the center. I am eyeballing it. It didn't have to be perfect. But I knew that I wanted to have enough space so that you're able to see all of the pattern paper, but I was also able to add in that cut file. I did have to change out my ATG at this point, and it is really a quick process. I do have the instructions in the lid of my ATG because sometimes I just need to refer to it. Once I get that done, then I adhere the rest of the paper down. I'm putting the polka dotted paper down. I did leave that at a full 6x8, and then I'm just adding these 2 smaller strips on the far right-hand side. I did move the blue paper over just a little bit. I knew that the stripe paper was going to be in between those, and so I knew that I could move it over so that I could see a majority of that blue. And then I decided that I wanted to add the photos up on fun foam. I did pull out a new sheet of fun foam since I was using such a large portion of it. I cut the bottom piece off and then stuck both of them back in my basket, and I was looking for them for a second and then realized I had stuck it over the basket, so I had to pull that out. I just added some liquid adhesive on the back of the fun foam and added it down to my layout. Of course, pulling out my T-square ruler to make sure that it was straight. I then added my stamping block on top of it just to put some weight on it. I did have my silhouette running with this cut file. This cut file was perfect for this title. I was able to cut the cut file at about 6 inches, and it spans a majority of the layout itself. I had some issues with my mat. I think that my mat wasn't very clean, so there were a couple of pieces that didn't cut out very smoothly, but that was absolutely user error and not issues with the cut files. The cut file worked amazingly. Once I got the cut file off of the mat, I then used my X-Acto knife to trim out some of the pieces that didn't cut because my mat was not clean. It didn't take me that long at all, and there were really just tiny pieces that missed. I probably also need to clean out my blade. It's been a while since I've done that as well. But you can see here how the cut file looks really nice in that area, and then I was going to add the 2x2 squares next to the cut file. I then looked through the pattern paper trying to decide what I'm going to back the balloons with. I knew I wanted to have some fun colors in those balloons. I did decide to go with that plaid as well as the green polka dot. And then I thought, you know what, I need to go ahead and cut out the word happy birthday in the green cardstock. And so I went ahead off camera, did that, and then continued to decide what colors I wanted to do for my balloons. There are multiple ways to add cut files to a layout. I feel like this is probably the easiest way. I went ahead and just adhered the cut file down to my layout with some liquid adhesive, and then I'm going to fill in the pieces with the green cardstock for the word happy birthday and then the pattern paper for the balloons. I do keep the inner parts of the letters like the A and the P, R, and D so that I can use those pieces as well on the layout. So what I like to do is just take the letter itself, like the letter P, put it on the cut file, and then the center part of it, putting some liquid adhesive on it and then adding it down right where it belongs in the letter P, and then removing the P itself. So when you do cut out the cardstock, if you decide to do that with a cut file, what I did was I made a copy of it and I moved it over to the side so that I had the exact same size with it and I didn't have to worry about it resizing by mistake. And then I removed all of the inside pieces, so both of the inside pieces to the letter A's and P's, D's and R's, and so it was just a solid color. And then I was able to use the top pieces to make it look like it's supposed to look. I decided on a blue tone-on-tone that I used on the far right-hand side, as well as I pulled out a piece of orange cardstock that I had previously used in another layout and added it to the balloons as well. And I think that that color combination with the plaid and then bringing in the green, blue, and orange really helps bring in all of the colors. So the top two balloon strings hang down over the two bottom balloons, and they were super easy to put in. I didn't realize that I needed to keep the center pieces of the balloon strings, but I found them very quickly in my scraps that I had moved over to the side. And with the orange one, I was more careful with it because I knew exactly where that was going to go. The orange cardstock that I used was not the same weight as the pattern paper, so it didn't cut out as nicely as the pattern paper did. I probably should have put it on its own mat and let it cut by itself so it could cut multiple times, but I was okay with just using my X-Acto knife and cutting out the pieces that I need to. I then decided that I wanted the two smaller 2x2 photos to also be backed. I felt like they were getting a little bit lost on the pattern paper, so I did decide to back them in that green cardstock. I pulled out my layering guides. I do have a tutorial for this and I will link that here for you guys. I've said it before, I love these things. It makes perfect layers around any of your photos, no matter the size of them. So I backed both of them in that green cardstock, and then I did decide to adhere one flat to the layout, and then I added one up on fun foam, and I overlapped them just a little bit. There's some dead space in the photo that is flat to the layout, and so I felt like I could cover that up with the other photo. I then decided that I was going to add a little bit of stitching. There's not a whole lot. I just do one row of stitching right next to that striped paper, and I probably should have thought about doing the stitching before I put my photo down, as well as the cut file, but I just went with it. And then I also knew that I wanted to have some stitching in the upper right hand side. The sketch does call for a small cluster up there along with some stitching, but I had to build that cluster first. So I started to look through the ephemera pieces, and I found these like fan looking things and decided that I would add those to the top in blue and red. And then I added a birthday present, and I did not pay attention. I added the birthday present, I turned it over and cut it off and cut the top part of the birthday present off. And I was like, nah, I'm just gonna go with it. It is what it is. I probably shouldn't have cut it off because I cut the bow off, but whatever. I don't really care. I think that it looks fine as it is. Once I got that cluster created, I then started to add my stitching holes so that I could add a line of stitching at the top there. I then pulled out my threads and decided to use orange as my stitching, and I'm going to use orange in both of the places. So again, just doing that straight stitch right next to the pattern paper, and then also a straight stitch up at the top in that cluster as well. I did pull out my stitching tools. I have an Amazon storefront with all of my stitching tools. It is linked below if you wanted to purchase any of the stitching items that I use, to include that little metal tin over to the left. I love that thing. It keeps all of your needles in one place, and it is magnetic, so it makes it easy to have the needles right there. And then I also have this little box that I actually purchased that from Hobby Lobby. I like to have that box, and I'll just throw the stitching tools that I need to that little metal box, my scissors, my threads, and then that way it makes it very easy to transport my layout wherever I'm going. Sometimes I'll do it on my room, sometimes I'll take it places if I'm going to be sitting in the car or sitting places. I did slow down the video here so that you could see the stitching that I did. It wasn't a whole lot, but I did add a little bit of stitching to the layout. And then I'm going to start to embellish the areas of the layout. I did decide to add a flag that says "It's Your Day," and that is up on Fun Foam. I then looked through the sticker book and was trying to find something else, and I really wasn't finding anything in the sticker book. And then I went back to the embellishment pieces. When I started this layout, I realized that I did not have them on the page protectors. So when I went off camera to do my stitching, I also decided to put them on the page protectors. I found a yellow tag that I also added over to the far right-hand side. And then I was trying to find some word phrases that might work. Couldn't find that, so I went back to the foam stickers and I was able to find a green star. And then I was like, oh, I need to add the number 1. So I was able to find the number 1 from the sticker book, and I added that to one of the balloons. And then I also added these little like noise makers to each one of the clusters in the upper right, as well as next to the photos. And then I realized I needed another cluster over on the far left-hand side. I was able to find a larger noise maker, and I did decide to add that up on Fun Foam. So I just cut off a really tiny piece, and because the photos were already up on Fun Foam, I just needed it on the edge of the noise maker. Added some liquid adhesive to it, and then added it to my layout. Back in the sticker book, I was able to find a little yellow party hat and added that to the cluster on the far left. And then I pulled out these word phrases from Tim Holtz. This thing stays on my desk all the time, and I was able to find a word phrase that says "make a wish," and I added that to the cluster on the far left. I did have to add just a little tiny piece of Fun Foam because it was sticking off the photo just a little bit. And then I went back to the sticker book and realized that there were phrase stickers in that as well. But I did decide to pull out one that says "It's Your Day," and I added it to the cluster in the upper right. And then that is it for this video. Here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. I hope you guys go to check out CreatTiffCuts and see what cut files she has and support her small business. If you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.